Zo ianid gwetsi dagi kaha, tal anat avi nole jules dunadoa nole shogwo achuj corbin dudo. Guys get that? All right. So my name is Amber. I'm 38 years old. I'm from Georgia. I grew up in Leicester, and I live here in Waynesville now. I have 3 children, 2 teenage daughters named Avi and Jules, and my son Corbin. So Galielite, Gedoha, I'm happy to be here with you guys. I started out in language preservation a few years ago. Let's see, they're trying to get my slides hooked up. So it's called the CLAMAT program. It's the Cherokee Language Master Apprentice Program for the Cherokee language. I studied alongside fluent speakers for about 2 years. When I was growing up, my grandma was a fluent speaker, but as I know many of you are aware, with a lot of loss of heritage due to boarding schools and things like that, where over the last few generations, the Cherokee language is all but diminished. I mean, we are doing everything we can for revitalization efforts, and I feel confident that the Cherokee language will be prominent again. And I think, like with all languages and everything, like stuff will evolve, so I think it will be something that, you know, us as second language learners will be able to speak and then carry on and teach our children. Because my mom was not a fluent speaker. She knew how to weave baskets. She learned that from her mom. But as far as the language, my grandma thought it was too painful to teach them, especially with boarding schools, because you were punished if you spoke your native language. So at the point now, we have about, I think, a little less than 140 fluent speakers on the Eastern Band, and most of them are above the age of 60. So as us as learners, we pretty much just jump out of the frying pan and into the fire. Like as soon as you get enough knowledge of the Cherokee language, you're out the door. So as soon as I graduated the program, I was teaching high school. I taught a high school language class. I taught the parents of the children at the Noquisi Academy. That is a full immersion school where Cherokee is spoken first, English second. And then for a few months after that, I was the substitute art and music teacher for the Noquisi Academy. So we taught little songs in Cherokee. And what I do mainly for my main passion is puppetry. So I grew up a little bit in theater and doing puppets. So we have a Cherokee puppet show that's all in the Cherokee language. We normally go around to local places and have puppet shows. It's really fun. And it's actually like nerve-wracking to be up here by myself without my little like ESP is what I call him, my emotional support puppet. His name is Unegawan, which means white fur. And we're part of this puppet troupe called Igali Puppets. And we're on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, but it's Igali, Igali Puppets, which Igali means we are all friends. So if you get a chance to check that out. But Noquisi Initiative Dagaluwistaniho, which now I work for the Noquisi Initiative. So it's been awesome because I've been able to combine both of my loves together. So, you know, growing up, I grew up off the boundary in Leicester. I knew a lot about identifying different plants and things in the woods, mainly about Cherokee basket tree. My grandma wove honeysuckle baskets, as did her mom, as did my mom. So we're a few generations of doing baskets. Working with the Noquisi Initiative, it has allowed me to expand on helping these resources, learning more about them, and not only just baskets, which is a lot of these Cherokee, like the Cherokee arts, it's becoming, a dying breed as well, along with our language. So we're trying to revitalize not only our language, but our heritage, our culture, and working with the Noquisi Initiative. As you can tell in the mission statement, we preserve, protect, and promote culture and heritage in the homelands of the Cherokee, which over the last few years of working in the CLMAT program, I've became more knowledgeable and aware of these Cherokee mounds. Has anybody ever been to a mound around Cherokee? See a few hands. Some of you guys, you've probably just drove right by and didn't even notice them. We have a few that are close to here. We have Watauga, Cowee, Noquisi, Kadua, and these are all considered mother towns. So what I mean by mother town is that they say that you can follow the Tennessee River and get to any of these mounds. Do I need to ask you to switch the slides, or does this little thing do it? Okay. So this is kind of what we do. We promote learning about our culture. We promote keeping that culture alive. And Noquisi Initiative first started out, servicing and stewarding the Noquisi Mound, which is in Franklin. Has anybody seen the Noquisi Mound in Franklin? Hey, Kayla. Oh, yeah, we got another one. So if you've ever been down to Franklin, you'll miss it if you're not looking for it. The mound, you'll see a bunch of buildings, there's a road, and this significant mound to us, like to the Cherokee people, is just like this little triangle right in the middle of town. And it looks like a little hump. And to most people, you think, you're like, well, that's just a little hill. But that was one of our mother towns. It was Noquisi, which means the star place. And we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So, with it being called the star place, it was one of the original mother towns. And I went to this seminar with Dr. Brett Riggs, and it was really cool because he was identifying this theory that those mounds I was telling you about, like Noquisi, Watauga, Cowee, those mounds, they say they line up with the 3 stars of Orion's belt. Have you heard of any other structures that do that? The pyramids. Osta. So you think about the pyramids of Giza. You think about, they called the Cherokee people the star people. Like how we were able to identify, even that long ago, without any kind of assistance, telescopes, or anything else, that along with, like pyramids, those mounds lined up with Orion's belt. And then the Kadua mound, it lined up with the North Star. So they said if you follow the North Star, it would lead you back to the motherlands. So wherever Cherokee people were around, they could follow the North Star, and it would lead them back to their mother, to the motherland.
Where does Orion's belt lead to?
To space. All the way up. So this is just a little description of the Noquisi Mound. So it was built around 10,000 CE. It was one of the, what I was telling you, considered one of the mother towns. So there was a little bit of discrepancy with the town of Franklin and the EBCI, which is the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indians, where we're trying to get that rectified as of now. But in 2016, the Eastern Band of Franklin kind of came up with this third party, which is the Noquisi Initiative, which is what I work for. So we became stewards of the mound. So it's not technically at the moment owned by the EBCI, nor is it technically owned by the town of Franklin. We have the deed for the Noquisi Initiative for the mound. And as you can see, go back one. So as you can see, where that mound is, it's still pretty high. Like you can see it driving by. It looks like this big old huge hump. But as you look, that's how much it has come down over the years. Back when Noquisi, the star place, when it was prominent, a council house sat on top of that mound. And these other mounds that are around in Cherokee, you can just sit there and imagine just going straight up and having a council house right on top. And it's really neat too because the Kadua Mound, where they consider, the eternal flame, the first fire, it's down below. In Cherokee language, we consider fire alive. Coals and everything is considered alive. And they probed down into the mound, and they found like coal and ashes where that fire's still there. So they say the fire's still there, it's still burning, the eternal flame's still there. All right, we can go to the next one. So that's that's Kowee. That is another mound that we have that's down in Franklin. So in 2017, they purchased 70 acres of the mound. So you think about, 70 years ago, or not 70 years ago, in 2007, that's not that long ago. And that's another thing too that we're talking about, not saying getting land back, but in a sense, yeah, it's not just any kind of land. Like these are, this land means something. These mounds mean something to the Cherokee people. So we were able to purchase that back in 2007. And so the Noquisi Initiative were able to make signage to go in front. Because that's what we try to promote a lot too, is just cultural understanding. Understanding who was here before us, what we can do for preservation in the future, and yeah, just having that understanding. Okay, the next slide. And another thing we do are the Blue Way trails. So we are funded by grants. We're a nonprofit. So this year we're actually going to be posting, that's one of the signs that we're going to be posting along the Little Tennessee River. So if you get out there, anybody that likes to kayak, get in the river tube, when you're down the Little Tennessee River, you'll see some of those signs. Hold on. And then we have honoring Longman, which now it's kind of changed to long person, either or. Gunahid, Ashkaya. Gunahid means long, Ashkaya means man. And that's pretty much saying that his head is in the mountain and his feet's towards the sea. Because we got to care about our riverways, River, water is sacred. It's an important thing. It cleanses as it goes. It touches all our natural resources. And that's a picture there of the cleanup. So in 2021, we started doing the Honoring Longman, which I see Caleb there a few times. Well, every year. We come there to do the puppet shows. So in the fall, we get groups together and everybody goes out and then we pick up garbage. And we came up with this thing about the Cherokee phrase of picking it up, which you guys can take with you and use. Hoot the gee. Can you guys say that? Hoot the gee. Hoot the gee means pick it up. Hoot the gee. Pick it up off the ground. So that's a good way of thinking, not even just for honoring Longman and our rivers and streams, just the earth that we live in. Hoot the gee. See a piece of trash? Pick it up. Come on. We can go to the next one. And we have our apple trails down there. The Cherokee people developed a lot of different varieties of apples. So we're trying to work on bringing back some of those apple trees along with other native plants like peaches and things like that were grown here. So down in Franklin, right next to the mound, you'll see our apple trails that we put up. Hold on. So recently we had a workshop about gardening tips and invasive plants, which, it's kind of hard as far as like doing this job because I'm learning as I go. Sometimes you can have the care, but the care can only take you so far. As I was learning this language, as hard as it is, I'm learning how to take better care of our cultural resources, our environments, not just in Cherokee, but Western North Carolina in general. They say that most of the production we have here is mostly in livestock. With the terrain that we have and everything else, commercial farming hasn't, been as prominent in North Carolina. But not only that, just personal growth of, gardening and things like that. You know, a lot of people, it's gone away. You know, we're trying to promote more gardening, you know, promote growing your own fruits and vegetables, trying to eat, you know, healthier, finding ways to give back to your community, growing gardens and helping your elders, helping people that are less fortunate. You know, we're starting up something about, you know, creating these little food boxes and stuff that we're able to grow for ourselves, for our children, but also for our community of people that are unable to grow. Because that's a sense of Gadoogie, is that sense of community, that you're looking out for one another. And so last month, we had our Invasive Species Week, which over the last month, I have learned a lot about different invasive species, especially one that I'll tell you about with basketry that I had no idea was considered invasive. And it's kind of one of those things like learning something new. You know, that's what I'm having to do. I mean, a lot of these things, I know you guys, like hearing you guys talk to Caleb, I can tell that you guys are so much more on top of it than I am. So we'll start off with our first one. Anybody see that beautiful tree? The old Bradford pear. I guess you guys see it blooming around here now, don't you? So in Cherokee, we call it Ashkung, Ashung, Ajadi Iust. It's a tree that stinks like a fish, which as you know, you get close to it, it's got a pretty fishy smell. But they're completely, you know, they're not great to have around. In fact, last year, South Carolina has banned the purchase of these trees. And some places they have bounties now that they will pay you to take down your tree and offer you compensation or other trees for taking them down because they don't have any value. They don't help the birds. They don't help the insects. If anything, they break real easily. They fall down. They spread around through seeds that the birds eat. So they become pretty invasive. They offer nothing to our environment. Hold on. So then we have English ivy. See a lot of this stuff around town. You guys see a lot of English ivy around? Yeah, it gets heavy, and it's that ground coverage. You know, it kind of blocks the sunlight from other things. It will strangle out your natural trees and everything around. And not only that, there's a pathogen that it carries that are harmful to elms, oaks, and maples and other native plants. And then kudzu, that's our favorite. Y'all see kudzu around? Yeah, it's everywhere, ain't it? And this is another thing that I didn't realize is that it can weigh, like the roots of it can weigh over 400 pounds, like just the sheer weight of it, that it could just completely take over areas. And at our plant workshop, we had this lady there named Cindy Kale, and she wrote this book called The Love Language of Plants. And she was talking about things that we can do with these invasive species. Like she said with kudzu, you know, you can make baskets, you can make jam. It's kind of looking at the better, but it's kind of getting rid of this kudzu. But then she also said that when there's damage to lands and things like that, you'll see more kudzu, like on roadways and things like that. When stuff has been cut through and the ground's been disturbed, they say you see a lot of kudzu. Hold on. And then Japanese honeysuckle. This is the one I learned new things about. I have grown up picking that stuff my whole entire life, ever since I was able to go in the woods and get it. And it hasn't been fun. You know, we normally get it off of roadways and things like that because when we do baskets, we try to get the straightest vine. And when you see it out in the wild, normally it's just all bunched up in a bush and twirling and going around trees and everything else. So it's kind of harder to gather at that point. But Japanese honeysuckle, you can see it in the winter. So that's another thing too about us when we gather honeysuckle. You can get it in the spring, you can get it in the fall, because even towards late fall and winter, when everything else goes dormant, you can still see the leaves. It's considered like an evergreen. Hold on. So, about honeysuckle vines. This right here is Lucy George and Agilishi Nashi Ganashin, which this is my grandmother, Nancy Consine, on the other end. So with me and my little sister, and she's going to be doing basket demonstrations. Oh, I see her right there. So Lucy George, she kind of cultivated using honeysuckle vines. Before, we were prominently using river cane. And towards the early 1900s, as a way just to make a living, she had to make, and that's how I know from my grandma and my mom, it's supplemental income. So she was using honeysuckle vines as a way to weave her baskets so she could make extra money to make ends meet for their family, which a lot of people in Cherokee do. That is a lot of their supplemental income. So after Lucy George, my grandmother, she was also a honeysuckle weaver. She learned how to make river cane baskets and white oak baskets, maple baskets, but she specialized in honeysuckle, which, as we just saw in the slide before, it is considered an invasive species. So in a way, we were kind of taking that species away, but then now we're running into the problem of, with the DOT and everything, just spraying all these roadways, overhangs where honeysuckle normally grows straight to get the best vines, and it's completely taken that out. So we're having a little bit of issue with that. So a lot of people have been turning to reed to weave their baskets with, because honeysuckle is becoming harder to come by, which I guess in a sense it's a good thing because we're getting rid of something invasive, but then also it's taking away someone's livelihood. So we have this person named Adam Griffith. He's been working with the DOT about allotting some areas where people that want to come in and get honeysuckle baskets, they can come in and gather vines. And that right there is what some of the vines look like after they've been boiled and cleaned. So normally a bundle of vines is about 50 pairs, which is about 100 vines per bundle. And then that's the natural color. Hold on. And these are what some of the baskets look like. These are 3 generations right here. Has my grandmother's baskets, my mother's basket, and my little sister's baskets. And my grandma's kind of come up with this circular design that goes around. You kind of make it your own. Normally out in Cherokee, you can get so good in a craft that you can look at it and tell whose family it's made from. And so we specialize a lot in honeysuckle. And as my little sister can tell you, it can get treacherous to gather. My grandma said normally going out and gathering vines, just getting a couple of bundles that can make a few baskets, it can take up to 6 hours. Because you've got to try to get the straightest vine, normally between 10 to 15 foot, and you have to follow the vine all the way back. So when you're thinking, if you're standing on the side of a bank or standing off a river or off a roadway, looking down off an embankment, you're having to follow that vine up and gathering it up to get it together. And then after that, the process, then you have to dye them. And then we use a lot of natural resources to dye our vines and our splits. But what I was saying before is that it's been kind of a little bit harder to come by. So a lot of people have been buying commercial reed to supplement not being able to have honeysuckle vines. And what me and my little sister realized is that these people that were buying these reeds and stuff is actually hurting the environment more, because it's taking out the reed, like the plant that it's used to make the reed, it's causing an endangerment of those. So it's kind of a back and forth, like we're using a natural element somewhere else instead of being able to use an invasive species that we have, kind of balancing things out. We're actually using that reed and taking it away from someone else's natural resource. Hold on. So then we have white oak, tala. That's how you say white oak in Cherokee. And that is the main base to our baskets. And as you can see there, that's one of my little sister's baskets. And that's strictly, completely made out of white oak and dyed with natural dyes. And with white oak, what I was reading is white oak trees help keep carbon in. So they said they're better for the environment. They offer shade. When my grandma would go and get white oak, they get some of the saplings, and she's gotten so good because normally they would take a chip out of it. And she was saying, if you take a chip out of it, it browns up, it can ruin the tree, because there's like a special way of getting white oak for your baskets. It has to do with ring size. You don't want your rings too close together, too spaced out. And she got to the point that she could walk in the woods and look at a white oak sapling and be like, peel back just a little bit of the bark. And she said the way the bark runs lets you know how straight your splits are going to run. And she goes, this is the tree, and you can take down the sapling. But we've also had issues with, oak disappearing. There's disease, many other things, but like as far as like ground coverage and things like that are choking them out, not letting them grow, as you heard in Caleb's presentation. Hold on. So then we have bloodroot. Bloodroot is a native plant that we have here. We use that for our basket dyes. And my little sister will show you, we got a couple of baskets back there. The red color in it in our dyes is made from bloodroot. And you got to be careful with handling bloodroot because it can be a skin irritant, and sometimes it'll make you break out. And do not eat it. I know you don't, hope you guys are well enough to know you just don't go around picking up and eating random things, but I've been surprised by most people. But with the thing about bloodroot is what we all got to remember, the same thing with morels. Has anybody ever gone foraging for morels or for ramps, things like that? Stop. So, when gathering morels, gathering ramps, you got to leave a little bit behind. When you come in and you pull the whole root up and take the whole thing with you, it's not going to come back. It takes a long time for bloodroot to grow. It takes a long time for ramps and things like that to grow. And when you go in and foraging, just learning about how to top the mushrooms off, how to cut the ends of the root, put it back in the ground, and it'll keep producing it. So a lot of things too is just making sure that when you're taking it, you're doing it properly, so you're not just pulling up the whole plant, because then it won't come back the next year. Hold on. And then this is butternut. Butternut and walnut, which is pretty much white walnut and black walnut. And there's been a lot, what is the name of it? A butternut canker. So I guess you guys haven't seen too many butternuts around. I know it's been a harder and harder plant to find. A lot of times we can use the hulls or the root bark to use that. The color comes out like a almost black color when we use butternut, and a brown color depending on how many walnuts you use for walnut. But there's a lot of like fungus. There's things that's killing out the walnut trees in the west. What they're worried about it coming over here on the eastern side. Butternut has been harder and harder to find because of that canker. The fungus has killed out a whole bunch of them. So it's gotten to the point that in Tennessee it's considered threatened. So these are just natural resources that we have that we're fighting just to keep here. All right? And then river cane, which, like what Caleb was saying, river cane, there's only about 2% left in the world. And you think about that, that's crazy. Because most of the stuff you see around, it's not river cane, it's bamboo. But river cane offers a significance, like it holds together, like what he was saying through the hurricane. It holds banks together. It creates habitats for animals. And not only that, when you get a cane break with these canes together, it's not the same as bamboo. It's not going to grow as high. And the cane itself, it don't get more than an inch thick, like an inch in diameter. And not only that, we use river cane for baskets. We use them for blowguns. We use them for fishing poles. They make great fishing poles. So as you can see here, this is one of our traditional baskets that's made out of river cane. And if you take beeswax, there's some of these double woven river cane baskets that you put the beeswax in, and they're waterproof. So a lot of these can be used like daily use. And as you see here, blowguns, which, you can get small animals. I normally do it for target practice. I haven't brought myself yet to try to get a squirrel or anything. I'd feel terrible if I didn't have enough lung capacity and I just injured it. Like, all right. And then bull thistle. That's one of those pasture weeds. Some of them are invasive, some are not. From what I understood, that on the eastern side where we're at, it's just like a pasture weed. But it does do great with pollination and things like that, feeding birds and bees. And what we do is we make darts with them. So as the bull thistle dries, it becomes that white little puff stuff at the top. And then what we do is we use string and we pull the thistle out, and then we wrap it around a piece of wood, which we normally use yellow locust because that's a hard wood, but here lately it's been good just to use a skewer, kind of making do with what you have, because those things are carving one individually, and that's kind of one of them things too, is the time it takes to do these things. And the world we live in now, we just feel like we don't have the time. It's like the same with baskets. You know, my mom would get mad, and it's not just my mom, it would be any kind of basket maker. They're like, how long did it take you to make that basket? And then sometimes she'd be like, 2 years. And you're like, wow, it took you 2 years to weave a basket? Like, no, it took me 2 years to get the materials. You know, sometimes you think like when you're getting bloodroot, that's normally in the spring, walnuts in the summer and fall, your honeysuckle in like late spring, in the winter. That's all year. You can go up in the woods where you've always had bloodroot, you go up there, it's gone. You can have a walnut tree that always produced and it fell down. You know, you can have your favorite honeysuckle patch and you go and it's been sprayed. So then you got to weave it. So you can have a good year where you get everything you need. It's pretty much 90% of gathering your materials, 10% weaving the basket. The process of it can take up to a year. And if the, walnuts fail, if the bloodroot fails, then you're right back to where you started and you're having to wait for another year. And that's why sometimes you'll see baskets that have a lot of red in them because you did good with the bloodroot. And then there's sometimes you look and most of them are brown because that's all you could find that year was walnut. And the same with bull thistle. Sometimes bull thistle's been harder to find. So a lot of times you can substitute with faux rabbit fur, using bamboo skewers instead of carving yellow root. Because sometimes, it's either the natural resources are hard to find, and then it takes the time to do it. So, this is what we can do together. One of our mission statements for the Noquisi Initiative is intercultural understanding is universal. It's just taking the time to learn about someone else's culture. Taking the time to understand that we weren't here, there was people here before us. It's our earth that we're all taking care of. Even though like where the Cherokee reservation is now, in respect to how big it was, it's taking that care of just knowing that something was here before you. Somebody was here before you. This is what they were doing before the removal. This is where it's at now after the removal. And when you think about those pictures I showed you with Lucy George and my grandma, that's 2-3 generations ago. So you think about 2-3 generations ago, they weren't allowed to vote. They weren't even U.S. citizens. So it's crazy to think that now, that's just a couple of generations. And now that we're, U.S. citizens, we can vote, we still can't have our culture and heritage. That was also taken away. So now we're at the point that we're trying to rebuild with what we have. We're rebuilding with speakers that are in their 70s that are allowed to, speak the language. We're rebuilding with having gaps of generations of how to do things. So that's why you'd have people that their grandma did something, but they can't do it because it was hard to teach them. Sometimes they was doing it for self-preservation. to keep them from having to deal with what they had to go through. So just having that understanding about other people, people that used to be here, people that still are here, because it's not talking about Cherokee in the past tense. Cherokee people are here. We're here trying to learn the language. We're here trying to learn our culture. And we're trying to make you aware of what's helping and what's hurting. And another thing is identifying these invasive plants and animals in the area. Because like I said, I've been mainly in, language revitalization. So taking on this job as a project coordinator, it's having to learn all these things. I learned that honeysuckle was invasive. I never even knew that. It's like, even as our own, we can, taking time to learn about ourselves, learning about where we live, what's invasive, what's native, what can we do to get rid of invasive, what can we do to promote native. So, and also is getting involved. A lot of the things that we do at the Noquisi Initiative, we wouldn't be able to do without volunteers. With those roadways and apple trails and everything, we had students like you guys come in and volunteer to do these things. Taking time out, not for yourself, but doing something for the betterment of the environment. Helping out just locally, like what I was saying with gardening. You think of someone else that you can help them out. And it not just being an environmental, just in general, like people looking after people. And then the other thing is just, there's only such limitations of what you can do, but if anything, just try not making it worse. It's like it takes no effort to throw something in a trash can versus throwing it on the ground. It takes no effort to pick up something off the ground, even though you didn't throw it there. You're not making it worse. If anything, you're making it better. But by not throwing it down in the first place makes all the difference. Come on. And then there's this quote I read, which I thought it was really good. They said it's a Cherokee proverb. They said it's an Indian proverb, a Chinese proverb, maybe something Ronald Reagan said back in the day. Everybody's been quoted to say this, so I just left it blank where it came from. But a society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they know they'll never sit. So that's a good thing to take away from it. Thinking about how, like what the Cherokee people did, thinking about the future generations. We're not teaching this, like me learning the language. I'm not learning it for myself. I'm learning it to teach. Most of these elders, when they pass away, they're never going to hear their grandchildren speak it, but they'll speak it soon. It's kind of the same with the environment or anything else. Do something for the future generation. Even though you're not going to benefit from them right now, you're making it so someone can benefit from it later. Hold on. And Shki Nagad, that means thank you, everyone. It looks like I've got a little bit of time for questions. If anybody has any. Well, that good then, huh? Nobody wants to know anything? Oh, yes.
In reference to your puppet show, I heard how you spelled it, but I'm going to need you to spell it again.
Oh, it's I-G-A-L-I, Eagali Puppets. And I wish I would have brought him here today because it probably wouldn't have been as bad as me chucking through this one. Because normally just having a little puppet makes things a lot better. One. Yes. So when Sequoia made a written language, he didn't have any kind of literary skills. He didn't go to school or anything else. He wrote, I think it was 88 characters for the Cherokee language, because Cherokee was just a spoken language until Sequoia developed it into the Cherokee syllabary. What you normally see printed out, like when you Google Cherokee syllabary and everything, that was from what is a print style syllabary. Because you can go and look Sequoia's original syllabary and you can see how it's handwritten and the designs and everything else. But the Cherokee language, in a sense, it's a polyphonic language. So when you think about a Cherokee alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, and you bring those together to make a word, in Cherokee, those Cherokee syllabaries are a representation of a sound. So instead of A, B, C, D, E, it's A, E, O, U, and then it kind of keeps dropping down. I hope that answered your question. Yeah. Yeah, you can look it up and just look up Sequoia's original syllabary. Sequoah. Do you believe? Oh, there's a Y in there. It's key. It's like Sequoia, which means has that word for pig in there, because there was little stories about Sequoia. I know it's one of those like, my gosh, don't do the spelling bee. Yes, in the back. Hey, Ruth. Oh, hold on. Do what? Oh. All right, go ahead. Sorry. Yep, with the printing press, because it is very hard to make those kind of letters out of his original syllabary. So that's why when you look at the Cherokee syllabary that's used today, that's why a lot of it looks like letters that have been reversed. How even the first letter of A looks like a D, and then looks like a J, or it looks like an upside down V. So, all right, hold on. Any other questions? Yes.
Have you, you mentioned a little bit about gardening. Have you ever talked to Chuckle Walker or worked with him out of the North Carolina Cooperative Extension Program?
Yeah, Elaine Elizenbaum, she's the executive director. Because when I started working for the Noquisi Initiative, it was about late December, early January. So I'm literally kind of jumping into this. So we've been working with a few people, some biodynamic farmers and things like that. That's down in Burnsville. We've worked with the cooperative extension. Like right now, we're in the process of, getting grants for this. So we're kind of moving forward, with having our cultural sites to bringing more gardening and stuff to Western North Carolina. Wow. Oh.
What are ways we can bring Cherokee culture into a classroom setting?
A lot of it is just doing research. Reaching out. There's a lot of people that would come. Me and my my puppet troupe, if someone asks of us to come to talk about culture, we sit there, we'll ride out.
Will you come and talk about culture in my preschool classroom?
Well, yeah, of course. That's what we do best. That's what I said. Shkadolik, which means forgive me. It's nerve-wracking to be up here because most of the time, like I said, I keep banking off this puppet, but it's normally kind of hard, to get up in front of people as myself. If I'm here being being a puppet or, and talking like a bird for some reason, like that's okay to do in front of other people because I have a parrot puppet and things like that. But apparently just getting up and actually just speaking about what I do, terrifying. So yeah, shkadolik for that. But, why I feel so strongly about the Noquisi Initiative is the same as like I do language revitalization. It's all a whole, we can't put everything into language. We can't put everything into culture. Like it's all of it. We're trying to get that back. It's not just getting it back just because it was taken. It's getting it back so we could have our sense of self because it's taken away a part of you. Hold on. Any other questions? Osta. So we got a few minutes. I can teach you guys some of my favorite Cherokee words, which obviously the first one is shio. Let's all try to say that together. Shio. Shio, Osta. And another thing in Cherokee language is there's not a word for goodbye. We don't tell someone goodbye. We always say, Dana Dugga Hayu. Yeah, huh? Dana Dugga Hayu. Dana Dugga Hayu. Dana Dugga Hayu. I know it's a hard one. That means until we meet again. Because we'll be seeing each other soon. Well, outside here in a little bit when I show you the blowguns. But and so, yeah, what, as like learning about and the environment and everything, because I feel so, unequipped to be sitting here talking about natural resources in that kind of state when all I knew is what they were used for us. So it makes it nerve-wracking, but it's kind of like the same feeling I had when I had to introduce myself in Cherokee. I called myself a goat, and I called my mom my grandma. Like I've said things that have embarrassed myself way worse than this. So it could be, it's not as bad. Because as we know, as Caleb knows in the Cherokee language, you could say something, thinking about you're talking about something else. And so I thought I was talking about a spouse, and apparently I was talking about a pet. And they asked me what my spouse's name was. And then you say your pet's name, and that's pretty embarrassing. Or if you say you like to eat something, and you realize that the word you said was not a food, but a private part, that's embarrassing. When you tell someone you like their clothes and you like your shorts, but you told them you like their underwear, it's embarrassing. And you do it in front of everybody. And that's another thing too. And then sometimes they'll just mess with you and tell you some things that you go out and say it, and you realize by like the sudden shock of some of the speakers' faces of what you said that that's what you weren't supposed to say. But like I said, it's one of those that, as you guys know, going out in the world, learning something new, learning new things, it's scary. You're going to mess up, but that's part of living, It's kind of one of those that if you care about something and you want to do something, you just got to keep at it. Because all them embarrassing things, they'll happen anyways. You can do it with doing your best. So at least do something that you want to do and something you feel passionate about and something that makes you feel whole. All right. Hawana, God. Well, shki, galielik tse, denidaga hayu.